Hi there, in this video I want to explain you how the Lambda function retry mechanism works. In the previous videos I showed how to create a Lambda function and how the API gateway works, and feel free to navigate to my channel to have a look. So let's get started. First of all, there are different retry behavior based on the type of events. For synchronous events such as the API gateway, the Lambda function will not trigger any auto-retry policy. It's the application responsibility, so it's your responsibility to implement the fallback system. For async events such as like SQS or SNS, the Lambda function will trigger two retries by default. If all retries have failed, it's important to save the event somewhere, like for example with a dead letter queue. I'm going to explain later the concept of the DL queue. For stream-based events such as the Dynamo DB Streams, the Lambda function will retry the event until the data expires or till the process is successful. Let's see now the Lambda retry conditions. So the error can happen before the execution or after the execution. If the error happens before the execution, the maximum event age can be configured between 60 seconds and 6 hours. So the Lambda function will return the event to the queue and attempts to run the function again for up to 6 hours based on how you configure the event age. Then when the error happens after the execution, the Lambda function will attempt to run the function 2 more times by default. You can still configure this value between 0, so no retry at all, and 2. Events are discarded or sent to the dead letter queue if the retry attempts reach its maximum value. So depending on how you configure the retry attempts, it reaches its maximum value between 0 and 2, or event age reaches its maximum value between 16 seconds and 6 hours. So the first question you need to ask is it worth retrying? Because if you have like a Lambda function that you know that, in some cases retrying is only a waste of time and money, and if a request fails, there is no chance of like that our retry will succeed, you can set the maximum retry attempt to 0, and basically saying to the Lambda function, do not execute any retry attempt. And also you can add a global error handler on the function. So the first thing you're gonna code inside the Lambda function is a global try and catch block. And if the function goes into the global catch block, you're gonna send the error to, I don't know, a third-party monitoring services, or you're just gonna log the global error so you know that the error happened. But in some cases, it's not worth retrying because there is no way the function is gonna work. So if you want to basically avoid the Lambda function to retry, the only way is to set the maximum retry attempt to 0. The most common case though is to handle the retry attempts. So you can handle the retry attempts in different ways. I'm gonna explore 2 ways: the dead letter queue and the step functions. So let's focus first on the dead letter queue. The dead letter queue is a queue where you're gonna send the events either to an SQS queue or an SNS topic. From there you can decide to add maybe another Lambda function that is gonna read and process the fail events from the queue, or you can send the errors through a notification system. For example, you can send, the errors to a Slack channel. So it's easy to configure the dead letter queue both on the CloudFormation stack or on the AWS Console. I'm going to show you how in a minute. One thing you need to consider when you use the dead letter queue is how can you understand if the current execution is a retry or a new request. So the way of doing that is basically each Lambda function has a unique ID, which is a unique request ID. And only when there is a Lambda retry, you're gonna get the same ID as the previous one. So in Node.js, this value is inside the context object. So it's context.AWS request ID. So let's say the easiest way is to save the current request ID in a DynamoDB table. So every time there is a new execution of the Lambda function, you will need to check if this is a current execution. So this is the first execution of the Lambda function, or if this is a retry attempt. You're gonna know that because the retry attempt, as we said, has the same request ID. So you will find a request ID on your Dynamo DB table. This is important to, understanding if the current execution is a retry attempt or is a new execution, and not save, 2 times the same row in the database. Or to execute twice the same action. Let's say you're gonna send twice the same email to the client. So let me show you very quickly how to add the letter queue also from the AWS Console. So you go on a Lambda function. Here is like a very basic one. This is the new UI of the Lambda function on AWS. You go on the configuration, you go on the destination tab, and you click add destination. So the idea is to configure here based on the condition. So in this case is a synchronous invocation, and I want to set the on failure, and the destination type can be an SNS topic, an SQS queue, a Lambda function, or event bridge, event bus. So depending on your use case, you can configure this different destination. So in this case, I configured an SNS topic, and here I can basically choose from the existing one. You can also create a new one if needed. Then you hit save. The second way to handle the retry attempts is to use the step function. So the step function helps you to follow the state machine approach. And with this approach, it comes, let's say, more natural to run each operation in different states. With the step function, the developer can decide to transition between, states and retry attempts. And you can also configure the number of retry attempts and delay duration. Each of the tasks in a step function has its timeout, which can have a value of, I think it's also unlimited, the value of the timeout for the step function. And if the task is not completed in a specific time, a state timeout error is generated. So you can configure this the retry attempts based on the different errors using step function. So definitely, like in more complex scenarios, when you need like granular control for the entire workflow, and if you need even more control on the retry behavior, I think step function are the right way to go. This introduces, of course, additional costs for state transitions, but it gives you like more flexibilities in return because you can control the number of retries and timeouts. Okay, that's all for the AWS Lambda retry attempts. I personally prefer that letter queue method because it's easier to configure, and it gives you good flexibility because you can choose between different destinations such as SQS, SNS, and also event bridge. I hope it was useful for you. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.